Hi, friends. I'm Asiatu,
And I'm Mary.
and together we're the Audacious Autistics podcast. We're both queer, non binary, intuitive coaches creating a safe space to discuss everything from autism to astrology, including social justice, intersectionality, and more, living unmasked and out loud.
Before we get started, we just want to take a moment to thank our Patreon family and all of those that help support us in any way. Whether you share our episodes on social media, buy our merch, or send us tips on Venmo and Cash App when you have the funds, we appreciate you so much. If you like receiving more personalized content and you're able to help support us financially, the links to our Patreon can be found in the description and on our social media at audacious.autistics. Last month, we released a Patreon-only bonus episode about executive dysfunction. And later this month, we're going to finish this conversation about food. So be sure to check it out there. The tiers start at just $3 a month. Now I'm going to pass it over to Asiatu, and they're going to tell us a little bit more about what we have going on.
Yay, thanks. So I have potent honey.
Yeah.
It is a CBD THC honey. It is unbelievably great for pain relief, insomnia, and speaking of which, for lack of appetite. So definitely check out New Aura Potent Honey. They also have Potent Potion for relief, relax, and sleep. Really good for insomnia. I use this pretty often when I have like bad bouts of insomnia. The Potent Potion is more potent than the Potent Honey. I never thought I'd say that. Can you say that 5 times fast? Also, there is podcast merch, one of which I'm wearing. It says, "Go where you're watered." This is another t-shirt that says, "Putting the fun in executive dysfunction." And lastly, there's a Unikin pouch, which is great for kids, for school supplies. On the front, it says Unikin. On the back, it has definition, which is unicorn and kindred, or unique unicorn and kindred. And it's a neurodivergent person that belongs to a community of others like them who give acceptance, support, and understanding. So these are great for back to school. They're canvas, super durable. Check those out and enjoy. There's also plenty of other merchandise with other designs also available, including the latest Wentworth design in a world of Elon's via Wentworth. So feel free to go check that out as well.
Awesome. All right, good. So thank you all for joining us for this 6th official episode in the All the Things series. In this episode, we're going to talk about food and neurodivergence. So as we get into this discussion, please know that you always have the right to pause the episode to resource yourself if needed. We know that this conversation can be triggering for many of us. So please know that you aren't alone and that this will be here for you when you're ready to come back to it. There is help out there for anyone that's struggling with eating disorders, and we're going to link some of that stuff in the description. So let's go ahead and get into it, shall we?
Yeah.
I, Mary, swing between small and large fat, currently sitting in the mid-fat range. If you aren't familiar with that scale, it starts with straight size, and that means that you can find your size in regular stores, you see your size in advertising, etc. It's the standard, right? So that's straight size. And then it goes straight size to small fat, to mid fat, to large fat, to super fat, to infinifat. And I have posted about this on my social media platform. There's also plenty of information you can find on Google for free. And we're also going to talk about this more as we get into the Patreon only bonus episode this month and future posts on Patreon. So, but for now, I'm just noting where my experience comes from. So throughout my entire life, beginning around 2nd or 3rd grade, I have struggled with binge eating disorder. And when I was in high school, I also struggled with anorexia and bulimia. And I am recovering from all of these eating disorders, but binge eating disorder is still very loud and present in my life. And it wasn't until recently, actually, that I connected the dots between my queerness, my sexual, gender, and neurological queerness, and my eating. And that's when I really started to understand my relationship with food and in turn, my relationship with eating disorders. And we're going to get into all of this and more throughout this episode and future episodes. But let me go ahead and pass it over to Asiatu to get their experiences a little bit, and then go into all of the things food and neurodivergence.
Thanks. Well, first, I just like to say thank you for sharing your story and being so vulnerable and transparent. I definitely appreciate that, and all the love and all the hugs. As far as me personally, I've always struggled with food since I can remember. I'm basically the other end of the spectrum in the sense that I struggle to eat. I don't enjoy the process of eating. It can be emotionally and sensory overload for me. And I don't necessarily enjoy food per se. I definitely eat just for the sole purpose of having not to die.
Yeah.
That's pretty much my only reason. That's not to say that there are times in which I do enjoy food. Just generally speaking, it's just I would rather be doing so many other things besides eating if I was given the option. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and honestly, increased appetite with CBD products has actually helped me, regulate my eating and my intake and increase it so that it's more standardized and I do eat more. So shout out to New Aura Club. I didn't even say where you could find the products, but yeah, newaura.club is where you can find the products that I mentioned. And also, so cool. That's my story. Yeah, me and food, we're not friends.
Yeah, and I don't think most people recognize that people with neurodivergencies, people that are neurodivergent, have a higher rate. We have a higher rate of having eating disorders and having struggles with food. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about in this episode is why that may be and how we can kind of work with that opposed to working against it, to help not only ourselves, but if you're a parent or a teacher or a caregiver or a loved one of someone that is autistic or has ADHD or is neurodivergent in some way, so that we can, kind of change the way we look at these behaviors. So we're going to start with ways that neurodivergence influences our relationship with food and our eating habits, and keeping in mind, as always, each of us are different. And these can vary day to day based on how regulated we are and how willing we are to be able to step out of our comfort zones, et cetera. So recognizing that these aren't going to be, for everyone, and we may miss some. And this is just the beginning of this much needed conversation. So let's start with sensory. I think sensory stuff is a main situation when we talk about this. So all the things sensory. So I'm a sensory seeker. And so one of the things that I do in my binge eating is I'm seeking some kind of sensory something. So I like crunchy, so chips, candy, carrots, cucumbers. And I like tingly things when I'm sensory seeking. So soda or spicy or sour. But that's my experience. And there's also the other side of sensory stuff. Yeah.
That would be me. I'm the other extreme. I'm sensory avoidant usually when it comes to food. Not in other areas, but specifically food, I'm sensory avoidant. I hate spicy shit. I can't stand it. I like spices. I don't like hot. And when I say spicy, I mean the heat aspect of things. I hate my tongue tingling. I hate it coating my mouth. I hate that I can't feel much of anything else or taste much of anything past a certain point because it's all just fire in my mouth. I hate that sensation. And I hate carbonation. When I drink, I just want to be able to drink it. I don't want it to actually burn. And I just never understood why people enjoy the association of discomfort or pain with food until I realized people just experience things differently, clearly. But yeah, it is not fun for me. I literally love flat soda. I've always been that way since I was a kid. I will shake it up and keep shaking it until it's majority flat. In fact, I have a flat soda sitting in my refrigerator. What I usually do is I open the soda, leave it in the refrigerator for a day, and then drink it the next day because that's how much I hate carbonation. So yeah.
That's so funny. That's
The
so funny. I'm the
exact
exact opposite when like the exact opposite when it comes to soda. Like if I don't drink it before it goes like, and not even flat, but before it stops like tingling all the way down my throat and
I know,
everything,
I
I'm
don't
like,
like
okay, I'm done with that
that.
soda.
Which is
Uh,
funny because majority of the people that I know who are autistic, who are close to me, are like you, and so
mhm.
they're just like, "Oh my God, how can you drink, flat soda?" But I remember like I had posted that I liked flat soda on Facebook, probably like around a year ago, or whatever, and so many people were like, "Oh my God, I thought I was alone! Like I love flat soda. Like I hate
Yeah.
carbonation." So yeah, it just depends on the individual. And I did want to say, piggyback off of what you said as far as how we can vary day to day. We can also vary within the day.
Hmm.
So, like, I can have a good eating day as far as breakfast. And then by the time lunch or dinner rolls around, I'm just like, I'm over food. I don't even feel like doing it type situation. And it can be moment to moment, and it can be influenced by what's available as well. So that's what
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a great point because it goes into like how food and issues in quotes, issues with food often isn't about the food. And it's often about how regulated we are, what's happening externally with our stimuli. So if I'm not stimulated or not feeling stimulated in ways that I'm sensory seeking, but there's times where I'm in overload and all I want is, French fries, no sauce, nothing else, right? Or
I
all I
love
want is
French
a piece
fries.
of bread, right? Because
I
I'm
love French.
so stimulated that I'm not seeking stimulation.
Yep.
I'm trying to avoid stimulation,
Yep.
and that's where we kind of get into same foods or safe foods, depending on, um, you know, I think same foods are often tied to neurodivergence. Safe foods are often tied to eating disorders and disordered eating. So I think that's kind of where that falls in for me. When I'm not sensory seeking, I am very much needing safety. And safety sometimes comes in a food that I can predict, a food that
Exactly.
I can control the entire, situation and
Yep.
experience.
Yep. I'm the same way. And I will say that when I am sensory seeking, with food on occasion, like I do love crunchy stuff,
Mm.
to the point where like I have TMJ, so it's not necessarily the best thing for me. And I also have trigeminal neuralgia, which can be triggered by a whole lot of crunchy stuff. So I have to like catch myself because I'll go to the extreme where I'm like, I want all the nuts, all the potato chips, all the fried shit, like all of it now. And my face is like, no, you don't. You really don't. You don't want to go there. And then the thing is, I'll do it for like days without even realizing it because I'll be stuck in a loop and stuck in a
Yeah.
rhythm. And then I'm just like, oh, and then I'll get like a twinge or something, or like my jaw's really sore. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I kind of need to stop eating so much crunchy stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, and even within the same person, like you can have sensory seeking and sensory avoidant. It just depends on what I'm going through, how the day's going. So, yeah, it's
Mhm.
I love crunchy, and I love vinegary and acidic taste.
Mm.
So I love like pickled everything. Give me all the pickled stuff, like all of it. I love it. And then of course, if it's like pickled and the sweet, like a sweet pickled, oh my God, I'm in heaven. I'm like, sugar and vinegar? What?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this is like, give me more. So yeah, I'm all about sugar and acidic, sometimes crunchy, but yeah, I just don't like spicy. And French fries are amazing. Like they literally are my favorite food. Like,
Hmm.
oh my, I've gotten into so many fights with ex-boyfriends because they'll be like, they'd always ask me like, I'm going to order fries. Do you want some? And I'm like, no, I'm good. And then I eat like majority of their fries, and they're just like, I asked you, until they got to the point where they just ordered and they stopped asking me.
There you
Like,
go.
that works. Make me happy. They are like, oh my God, I love fries. I don't care like what kind of fries. I definitely
Same.
have preferences. Of course, McDonald's is up there. I love shoestring fries,
Mm.
but I love wedged. I love waffle. Like, just give me fries. Potatoes, when you fry it, I'm happy.
I love potatoes. I'm a big potato eater. But there are so many people that I know that can't do potatoes at all, like my husband being one of them. Like he can't do potatoes unless they're like fried twice so they're crunchy. But if it's like the ones that aren't crunchy, like it's a textural thing for him. Like he can't do mashed potatoes, he can't do any kind of beans, like none of that. Like, yeah, I know.
Like my favorite things. I love beans. Beans do not love me, but I love beans.
Right. Yeah. So, a lot of neurodivergent people have this need for control of their experience because we experience things in such high intensity sometimes. So food is just one other way for us to control our experiences. And so again, can show up as same foods. This also shows up as repetitive and restrictive patterns with food. So we know that patterns are a thing in neurodivergence, specifically in autistic people. And so this can sometimes be when the eating disorders come into play, is when it starts becoming a pattern thing. So for me, with my binge eating disorder, for a long time, it was the pattern that I was in of, well, it doesn't matter. Patterns are patterns for each person, but I was in a pattern of doing this process and having this experience. And so I became dependent upon that pattern and obsessive compulsive beyond, like the people just saying I'm obsessed with things. Like it was actually OCD tendencies and such around my food eating and that whole experience. So it's not just the food as much as it is where I was going to be eating and what was surrounding me, and did I have something that I could have on the TV. So it's the entire experience that then becomes this thing, right? And it can either be something of avoiding experiences, or it can be something of gaining some kind of experience that's being missed. So again, just the point of, it's not necessarily the food, and Asiato and I talk about this all the time, our behaviors are telling us things, right? So just kind of recognizing that it can show up in different ways and mean so many different things, but it can also be a comfort or a safety or an escape that we use our food and our eating habits for as well.
For autistics, I just piggyback off what you said. For autistics, routine is something that's obviously that we crave, because so much of the outside world we don't understand, and so much of the outside world tells us that who we are authentically isn't acceptable. And so we're constantly battling that on top of our sensory differences and our sensory, overloads and our sensory, seeking and needs. So it's just a lot going on all the time. So a lot of the time autistics are seen as quote unquote controlling, but it's a matter of, like you said, being safe. It's not a matter of wanting to dominate and wanting to overpower. It's a matter of being safety seeking. I know for me as a kid, as many autistics are, we tend to be messy eaters because we are not necessarily paying the most attention, or like we're super indulging, or we have a lot going on, so we're not really necessarily looking at what we're doing. I mean, there's also issues with like clumsiness and things of that nature. So I was not the neatest of eaters, and I'm still not. But I remember as a child, especially being in puberty, I stopped eating in front of other people, but specifically boys, because I didn't want boys to see me as, a messy eater. And I remember literally going to parties or whatever and only eating like specifically like hors d'oeuvres and like, hand foods that like, you didn't have to really get into to prevent the likelihood that I'd spill something on myself, or like that people would tease me. And I always felt like everybody was watching me. And I just always felt like I was under a spotlight, and I just felt really uncomfortable. So for many years, it took me literally years to get over that. I still, if I go to new places where like new people, like when I used to always start like a new job as an adult and I would have to eat around other people, it was really uncomfortable for me because I just felt awkward and uncomfortable and just overwhelmed. And I didn't want, to eat around people. And I was also a preschool teacher for years. And a lot of the times, my director would ask me, like, could I eat with the kids? And another thing about me is when I eat with other people, the sensory is overload. So if it's multiple people eating at the same time, especially I have misophonia, so the whole chewing, And misophonia is basically having an emotional reaction to a sound, and usually it's anger or frustration or irritation. And for me, hearing someone else eat chew like enrages me. Like internally, I turn into the Hulk and I want to like just break shit. So can you imagine like sitting at a table with a whole bunch of like preschoolers? And I'm talking about like 3-year-olds, 2.5, 3-year-olds. And, you know, they're super messy, super sensory, super like loud and laughing and just the chewing. And I was just like, I'm just like, I can't do it. I just can't. So yeah. And then lastly, I'll just say, I ate eggs every day, like once a day, every day for almost 12 years straight. Mm-hmm. And that's, I don't know why my mom didn't figure out I was autistic, but huge sign right there. Like, and I would go through spurts of different like things that I basically just rotate. I have about like, well, growing up, I had about 10 things that I would eat literally. And then I would rotate them. Now as an adult, I've learned to like more and expand. So it's probably about like, maybe like 40 things. I might even be exaggerating a bit, maybe like 30 things that I'll eat that I pretty much rotate and in and out. But when I mean rotate, I mean like I'll eat the same 5 things for a good like 10 months. And then I'll like kind of swap out 1 or 2. And then like, so like, yeah, doing grocery shopping is really super easy for me because it's just the same shit. It's the same as last week. Yep. Same as last week, the week before. Yep. Same. So yeah, it's, and that's common amongst autistics. So if you have a child that is very particular in what they'll eat and they are a quote unquote finicky eater and have a repetitive eater, that's usually an indication of autism.
Yeah. And there was something that you had talked about, and I want to kind of jump back to it. And it was about, well, you didn't say rejection sensitivity dysphoria, but I'm going to insert that in because of, and it was when you were talking about eating in front of others and already feeling like, you know, we talked about in the bonus episode last month, we talked about rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And its connection to neurodivergence. And that plays a role here, you know, like Asiatu just was talking about how, you know, they struggle. A lot of us struggle to fit in. And so one other thing we have to focus on is food and eating in front of people. And our society specifically really has this negative stigma and this message that many of us have picked up on about eating, about food, about fatness in our society. And so there's also this possibility that some of us hyperfixate on that message. And in order to be accepted or at least not be rejected, we either don't eat in front of other people. And that was something that I'm very cautious and aware of, you know, as someone who is fat and has been the majority of my adult life. I know, or I imagine that everyone is watching what I put in my mouth. And so a lot of times I wouldn't, or I would do what you were talking about, Asiatu, where you would just eat hors d'oeuvres. And then by the time I left, I was starving. And so I would go through a fast food place and I would spend $20 on food because I was starving. And so there's this whole like piece of stigmas and how society views us tied to our increased probability of having rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And so that all plays a role as well. And during this conversation, I just want to address an interautistic conversation that happened this last week around fatness and the fear of being fat. And this, I just want to touch on briefly, but saying that you feel fat is fat phobic, and it is valid because of the society that we live in and the messages that we have all received around fatness. But when a straight sized person or even a small fat, mid fat person says they feel fat, or especially says it in the negative connotation, that is fat phobic, and it's harmful to put that out on your social media platform. Feeling that way is valid. having the feelings and the fear of fatness because of the society we live in is valid. But once you project that out onto others, it's harmful. Being fat is not a bad thing. It's not a negative thing. And it's not something to be afraid of being or becoming, period. It's just not. And so I just wanted to put that out here in this conversation, that having the feelings is valid because it's the society we live in, and it's fat phobic and something we need to address inside each of us, whether no matter what size we are, because that's the society we live in.
Both and.
Yes.
Both the feelings are valid and it's fat phobic. So both and. Also, as someone who, I will say that I used to do that just because I would say I have body dysmorphia. And, you know, for a long time, I always, you know, felt like I was always thin. And see, that's a whole nother thing. It's like the other end of this is the other side of the coin of fat phobia. Yeah. Is, you know, not to equate the two, because I will say that fat phobia is way worse than being skinny. And I've always said that, and I will continue to say that, because they're not even comparable at all on any fucking level. But I can understand internalizing, you know, a standard and a societal standard in a negative way. And that's what I'm specifically speaking to, in the sense of being thin. So because I was told for so long, oh, you're so skinny, or oh, you're so thin, or oh, you're so, or I was also harassed and bullied as a kid for being olive oil, string bean, too skinny. I was called anorexic, bulimic, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, once I started to gain weight, even natural healthy weight, you know, just no longer being a child and filling out as a woman, I had this fear that, you know, I was going to quote unquote become fat. And I will say that, you know, I had to work through that, and I had to grow beyond it and evolve beyond it. And it's not okay. And it's not okay on any level. And I feel bad for having said it around my friends, because a lot of my friends are fat, and and I have quite a few family members that are fat as well. And so it all goes back to the system. My favorite thing, systemic oppression, surprise! Yeah. It's the white European standards of what beauty is, which is what is standardized and what people are supposed to strive to be. And so, yeah, it's just so problematic in so many ways. And there's so many, especially ethnically, there's so many different bodies, you know, body types that aren't, you know, walking sticks. And I say that as someone who has always, majority of my life, been a walking stick. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. It's just descriptors. So there's just so much more to the spectrum than what, you know, is normalized. And it's going to shift slowly, but not nearly as quickly as it needs to. Oh, yeah. And, you know, we're going to get into more of this conversation in that bonus episode on Patreon. So we're not going to go deep into it here, but we did want to address it. And Asiatu, thank you so much for adding in your insight and your awareness of where you sit in the privilege of it all. And, you know, because that's the facts of it, right? Some of us have more privilege, and it can still suck for those people, right? Stuff still sucks for people with privilege. And it's different. So not comparing it, but recognizing that each are valid and each have a space. And, you know, we can work together to kind of take down that system, because it's not our own individual stuff that's wrong. It's the system that is wrong. And so, you know, so we'll go into that more. But some other things, so rejection sensitivity. And then the other thing that you touched on briefly, Asiatu, that I want to go back into is interoception, and how interoception plays a role with neurodivergent people as well. And for people that don't know, interoception is the ability to detect and attend to internal bodily sensations, which in this would be hunger and or fullness. Yep. So for me, I rarely get hungry and I rarely get thirsty. So I struggle with dehydration, and I also struggle with eating. So what people don't understand, especially, and this is common for a lot of autistics. So if you are a parent, a loved one, guardian, teacher, etc., of an autistic child, keep this in mind, is that we don't necessarily feel hungry. We don't necessarily feel thirsty. So I am a snacker. I am a total grazer. I do not like the sensation of big meals. I don't like feeling super full. It's one of the many reasons why I'm actually vegetarian, part-time pescatarian, because I don't like the feeling of eating meat. And I don't like how it just sits in my stomach and I become lethargic. And I literally can feel the weight of it trying to digest and the energy that it takes. And I do not like that sensation. So that's, and I don't, because I don't get hungry, I don't know when to eat. And so if it's not part of my routine, I literally can go all day without eating and be completely fine outside of then getting a headache or, you know, a migraine or something of that nature. But it's not until my body actually tells me that I'm hungry outside of me being in routine that I'm going to eat. Again, unless CBD products help me. And then real talk, I get the munchies and I'm like, oh my God, food is amazing. And I want to eat it all. I'm just like, no. Yeah. But I love CBD for that. I love it. I love it for that. So yeah.
I am the same way with not feeling hunger or feeling thirst until my body has another reason, either, you know, and I, you know, it can be with everything, right? But we're just talking about food here. But, you know, the other thing for me is, and this is part of my binge eating disorder, is not knowing when I'm full. So I just continue to eat and eat and eat because it feels good for other reasons, whether it's sensory wise or safety wise or whatever it is that I'm searching for in that moment. And so I'll continue to eat and eat and eat and eat and eat until I am physically sick because I have eaten so much. And that's when I know, oh, you know, like this is what's happening. But it can also show up like if we're hyper fixated on something. So that's one time where I will forget to eat and I will forget to drink anything because I am so into whatever it is that I'm doing. And then I realize that I haven't eaten for so long. So in the way that my mind works, it goes into you need to eat. And then that can very quickly turn into a binge for me because I have restricted myself and my body for so long. So it's like, you know, I had seen a video recently where someone did an exercise where they had someone hold their breath, right? They restricted them from breath. And when you're done and you take your first breath, you inhale really big because you've restricted your body. It's the same thing with food, right? You restrict your body and then you want to take that big breath or deep breath to fill it all up again. So it can show up in different ways, but interoception is definitely one of the links that ties. And then the other link that I wanted to talk about is dopamine. And this one's more going to be for people that have ADHD. And specifically with binge eating disorder and ADHD, it's that rush of whatever it is you're looking for, and you're getting it through that binge, through that food, or not even a binge, but through the control that you have over your body to not eat, right? So there are different ways, again, that this will show up for all of us, but dopamine specifically tied to ADHD is another way that our food can be, you know, influenced. Okay, so anything else, Asiatu, you want to add to that conversation? And then we're going to get into ways to kind of move forward now that we have this information.
No, I think we can go to ways of coping.
Cool. And I think one of the best ways that you and I have talked about is being creative, right? Making it fun, not forced, and getting creative. So you did a great post about thirst. And I think that's relative here as well. It's something that I do, and I know something that you do. We use fun cups and, you know, straws sometimes to drink, and that can be the same for plates, right? Getting fun plates. And then the other thing that I do, and this isn't going to be for everyone, is I use sauces to make my food experience better. But some people hate sauces, so you know, it's going to depend. But what are some other ways?
Same exact way as far as the sauces. I also, as I said earlier, I snack and I graze instead of eating full meals. So
decolonize your relationship to food and meals.
Yes. And it's not only, there's so many benefits of snacking instead of a meal. One is the sensory and feeling heavy, so I don't get that feeling. Two is easy access. And so if I think about it in the moment and I have snacks, I can eat it right away. I don't have to wait. I don't have to prepare. I don't have to exert much energy, which are all deterrents to me actually eating, which is one of the reasons why I don't cook, is because by the time I expend the energy to actually put into the cooking and the meal, I'm not hungry. It's gone. And then I can't force myself because that literally physically makes me sick. So snacks, especially if you have an autistic child, if you, that mother that has the bag of snacks or that parent that has the bag of snacks, always snacks. And
or the spouse. I for my husband and my husband for me, we take a snack bag because we know that, you know, we're snackers in that same way. And depending on our sensory stuff that happens, and you never know, right? If I'm going to go out for a whole day, I don't know what sensory stuff's going to happen to me. I don't know if I'm going to need some kind of sensory stability. So yes, on board for that.
Routine is also really helpful too, especially if, even if it's not like the same sense of like, you know, eating a meal 3 times a day, it's a matter of eating at a specific time. Like for me, I tend not to eat until like 2 or 3 hours after I first wake up, because it takes a long time for my body to fully process and to fully get my mind wrapped around things. And the last thing I want to do is put food in my mouth. And that's another thing, like growing up as a child, the whole breakfast is the most important meal of the day is bullshit. The first meal, whatever you eat after you wake up, is the most important, but that doesn't have to be breakfast. And that's what I feel like people lost in translation, or actually not even lost in translation, because that's not how they actually like express the idea. But that is now much more understood. It's not a matter of like when you eat, it's a matter of what you eat when you first wake up is usually the most important access part of the day. So like I said, I don't eat 2 to 3 hours after I wake up, and then I'm okay to eat, because otherwise it's horrible. Same foods, like we mentioned earlier, same foods or safe foods. I like, especially if you have an autistic child, try to have their same safe foods in the house all the time, like all the time.
What, just because I know people are gonna, oh wait, I'm echoing. I know people are gonna want to know what the pictures were that we had posted on the account. So let's get into that to answer that for anyone who is curious, because I know people are.
So there were some people that guessed it right. There were a few people, but it was a grapefruit. It was, well, that's my new thing now. That's my favorite food right now, is I love grapefruits. A lot of the reasons why I love grapefruits is I love acidity and I love sweetness. And so it has a combination of both. I also do kind of like a tang, like tart, but not too tart. It has to be like tart but sweet. Anyway, it was a grapefruit. And another reason why I love grapefruits right now is because of the potent honey. And it's a great combination, especially if the grapefruit isn't as sweet as I want it to be, because I love sugar. That's another thing. And I drizzle the potent honey over it, and it's amazing. It's a great combination. Also, I just put 2 and 2 together recently that sugar is a stimulant, and stimulants for ADHD people and autistic people calms us down as opposed to stimulates us. And so for the longest time, especially as a child, I was always seeking sugar. And to this day, like I have to catch myself, because otherwise I will overindulge in sugar and then I will suffer consequences. Won't go into the consequences, but they're not fun. So yeah, so if you have a child, and I tend to see that, like having worked with autistic children, it's pretty common for the children I worked with, that autistic children love sugar. And to the point where in the middle of the night, a lot of them would wake up and just, you know, go into the cabinet and just literally eat sugar, or a whole box of like sugared cereal. Again, going back to interoception, sensory seeking, trying to calm down, because likely they woke up, they want to go back to sleep, they're seeking sugar. So I also wanted to say that for people who struggle with insomnia, who are neurodivergent, specifically autistic and or ADHD, or both ADHD, I know this sounds counterintuitive, but especially if you're a parent of the child, give them sugar before they go to sleep. I know that sounds really counterintuitive, but it tends to help, and it can help. It doesn't help for everybody, and I can't guarantee it, but there are a lot of us who literally, if we like an hour to a half hour before we go to sleep, if we actually have a little sugar, it helps us to actually sleep as opposed to keeping us up.
Yeah, I drink a soda. Before I go to sleep for that reason. It helps calm
you
my
down.
system, which
Yeah.
everyone looks at me like I'm wild. And I am wild, but not for
Not
that.
reason.
That part is just because I know that it helps me calm down. Like
Yeah.
it's just everybody's different. So,
Exactly.
like again, decolonize your relationship to food and meals. No food is good or bad. Everybody is different.
Yes.
If
No
3
food
meals a
is good or
day,
bad. No
yes.
food is good or bad. Food
And
is
tying
food.
that, tying good and bad to it only brings shame. So, and it's the same thing with if 3 meals a day doesn't work for you, then finding a little flexibility around that. Like why are we so set on 3 meals a day being the right way? Well, I could go into it. I posted about it, but I won't here. But decolonizing why, going through why you feel the way you do about certain things. Like, where did that belief come from for you? And is it true for you? Is it true for your child? Is it true for your partner, et cetera? And how can there be flexibility in that? Honoring that each person's body is different, and what may work for you may not work for your partner. It may not work for your kid. It may not work for your parent, but that's because everybody's different. So,
yes. And some food is always better than no food. Some food is always better than no food. I will say that one more time. Some food is better than no food. So if you are especially a caregiver and or a parent and or partner of somebody who is autistic, and they literally are just like, all I want to eat right now are French fries, let them eat the French fries without the shame, without the thought of, oh my God, it's unhealthy, or oh my God, like it's horrible, or oh my God, this is the 3rd day in a row I had French fries. Having the French fries is better than them not eating for 3 days. So keep that in mind. Like, and the whole stigma of not only good and bad, but healthy, unhealthy. Like everything is okay in moderation, no matter what it is. Like it's all about moderation. It's not about what is or is not healthy. And again, I know for me personally, and a lot of autistics, I will swing from back and forth. Like we tend to be extremists. And so I will eat something unhealthy or eat unhealthy, quote unquote, unhealthily for days. And then another 2 weeks go by and I'm not eating unhealthy. And it's just a matter of having to allow myself to work through my cycle and also to question myself, okay, well, why am I craving this? And what are the roots behind my behaviors? Because like Mary said, behaviors are just the external. It's not, you have to get to the root to really fully understand. And a lot of behaviors, if you sit and you question and you process and analyze, you might realize, hey, I'm not feeling secure right now. Well, why aren't you feeling secure? Or hey, I've been more sensory seeking of late. What's going on? Why am I dysregulated? What am I missing? And food is a huge way to alert people like, hey, something's off balance. So yes, just let your kids just eat. And again, not to say that like, just spoonfuls of sugar all the time. That is not what I'm saying.
Right. But recognizing that, hey, maybe the food isn't the issue. Exactly. Maybe we need to look at other ways that they need resourced, right? Exactly. And that's exactly what Asiatu was just talking about.
And some of it can just be stimming activities and might actually help. I know that it's not food related, but it is it's interconnected because it's all sensory. So sometimes if it's like, I'm sensory seeking, and instead of having a whole bunch of crunchy stuff, which is gonna, bite me in the ass, no pun intended, and my face is gonna like hurt from it, then I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm sensory seeking. What else can I do, like stem wise?
Yeah, like I bought chew toys, so that I know that when I want to sit and eat an entire bag of potato chips, instead, I'm going to get out one of my chew toys. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? And that's part of the process of figuring it out, whether you're an adult doing this for yourself or whether you're a parent or a caregiver or a loved one of someone else. It's the first thing you try might not work, and that's okay. That's part of this process and part of why we're having these conversations.
The second or the third might not work either, but you keep trying. And for me, part of chewing sometimes is the sound. And so I like hearing the sound. And so sometimes for me, if I do like bubble wrap or if I do, one of those poppers, stem toys that I have, that helps me, satiate it without having to fuck up my face because I'll overindulge in crunchy shit.
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh, speaking of which, like, and by popping skin toys, I mean like one of these.
Yeah. Yeah. I have some of those too. I think yeah. So anyway, not necessarily getting stuck on changing the food experience because, especially for a child that isn't navigating this on their own and they can't communicate to you for whatever reason what it is going on. Try not to get stuck on the food experience and forcing certain foods, and recognize what else is happening, what other factors are playing a role. And yeah, so a couple shout outs before we get done though, for Noreen and Natasha. Asiatu, I'll let you kind of talk about those shout outs before we hop out of this conversation.
So I just wanted to say one more thing of the piggyback off of what you said. Don't force your kids to eat stuff that they're not open to eating. And just because they might, we know our bodies better than anybody else. And I understand they're kids, but I know for me, a lot of the times that I didn't want to eat something is because I had sensory overload, and because the smell was over empowering, or because I knew that texture wise, it wasn't going to taste good, or that if I put it in my mouth and it's early in the morning and I haven't woken up yet, I'm going to be nauseous and I might vomit.
Yeah, so, or we don't know what it's going to taste like, and I just can't take on one more thing I'm unsure about right now.
Exactly. So just honor your kids' boundaries. I also forgot to say another thing that could help, especially specifically with children, is cooking, involving them in the process, if they're open to it. Obviously, not all kids are. But if they want to, experience the different ingredients and, sensory wise, smell wise, taste wise, to have an understanding and an idea, that usually helps as well.
That's a great point.
Back to the shout outs, Noreen, I believe her last name is Hunani, but I'm not positive, and I will apologize to her if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but she is a registered dietitian on IG. Her handle is @RDS_for_neurodiversity. She is neurodiverse herself, has neurodivergent kids, amazing resource. Go check her out. And the second one is Dr. Latasha Larmy, and she's on IG as @FatDoctorUK. Amazing content specifically to decolonize your understanding of what fat is or is not, and fat phobia. Amazing resource, highly recommend. Go head out her way.
Yeah, great resources. And, again, we're going to finish this conversation, but
so much more to talk about.
And a lot of people shy away from this conversation because it's difficult, it's emotional, it's hard to navigate. And, we want to encourage the conversation in the comments as always, because it's something that Asiatu and I are both very passionate about. So thank you all so much for joining us for this episode about food and neurodivergence. We release new episodes monthly, but if you want to receive more content like this, one-on-one communication, access to our classes, or you just want to help support us, we would love to have you join our Patreon, where we offer exclusives, merchandise, bonus episodes, and live interactive chat forums. So be sure, again, to share your stories and your questions with us on social media. We love connecting with our community.
As always, like Marie said, we appreciate you being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Tune in to our exclusive bonus Patreon episode that we'll be doing a deeper dive of the things that we talked about today around food differences and continue this conversation. Our next episode for everyone will be all the things autistic communication. So that's going to be really great.
Awesome.
And until next time, always live unmasked and out loud.